On this episode of Lapeef, Let's Talk, your CTO and your CFO's information and contribution um, input influences what the CEO does in the company. Like, you're supposed to take into consideration everybody's input in order to make a more informed decision. I'll take input from a little child if they're able to give me the type of information to help me make a more informed decision. But let's be clear, it's still my decision at the end of the day.
Right. Okay. So you do take that input.
And yeah, of course. I'd be a fool not to. It's some dope. Listen, some of the dopest people in the world. I've met some women that's just absolutely out of this world with their ability to be able to decipher through some subjects and add value, and for her to be able to navigate through certain things. It's some keys that only women can unlock. You are a fool. See, the problem with guys, conversely, is that guys don't understand that women can be your biggest asset.
They can Google.
Talk to them.
Yeah, let them find out on Google.
This ain't the show for that.
JR, we might have to do another.
Look at you.
We'll figure it out. We're going to finesse that up. We're going to put that together.
Yeah. All right, we're still on the topic about submission being control. And so I know we heard Rebecca's. We still keep this moving, man. Submission being control. What are your thoughts about it, Kayla?
I think, like Q said, it's gotten a bad rap because there are people that are abusive but are trying to mask it as like submission. So I do think it gets a bad rap on that end.
Abusive?
Yeah, there are people that are controlling, but submission is not being controlling. But there are people that are controlling, and then they want to take that off as submission. So I do think it does have a bad rap. I think it also has a bad rap because, like Rebecca said earlier, it's mutual, but it's never spoken about as much in terms of we submit to one another, which is what the actual text says. So I think because of those two things, it gets a bad rap. Because I don't believe submission is control. It's not always about that, because I believe I think a good man is a leader, not necessarily a boss. Whereas like a boss sits in the office and you know, he kind of just, little people just do what you do what I say, right? Or you don't have to work here. Versus like a team leader, they are on the team with you. So not only that, they're performing as well. They have tasks as well. And they're just delegating based on people's strengths on how to get the job done, right? Because they're the strongest person. That's usually the person that's the leader, the strongest person in it. We talk in group setting. So in that context, it works because a good leader isn't thinking I'm the boss, I'm going to make all the decisions. A good leader is that I'm going to actually lead by delegating. So whoever has the talents, I'm going to put that in position. So I genuinely think that because of those like misconceptions, that submission gets a bad rap. But if you have a man that's a true leader, if you have a man that you respect and that also is submitting to you, I don't understand what the issue is. There should be no issue with it. But like I said, all those other things give it a bad stigma, give it a bad rap that it really shouldn't have, because it's super beautiful. And genuinely, I don't think you're in a real relationship if like either partner can't kind of check their spouse. I don't know what kind of relationship you're in if you could just do whatever and that person's just like, okay, yes sir. That doesn't, you're not in a real relationship with somebody genuine. You know what I'm saying? In a relationship, both people are able to say, listen, that makes me uncomfortable. Listen, that makes me uncomfortable. And that person respects that because they respect you and they're submitting to you as well. And we find some kind of compromise or whatever it's going to be. So yeah, I think that's what I think so far, but I'll keep listening.
Kayla, do you think that men should submit to women in a relationship?
I think courtship is submission.
So you think both people should submit to each other at the same time?
Wait,
throughout the marriage, yeah. Yeah, it's the text says to submit to one another. That's what the text says. So I genuinely believe that we're submitting to each other. That's what I'm saying when I'm saying if you're in a relationship with somebody you can't check, I don't know if you're in an actual relationship. So it's similar to that. Not that submission is checking, but it is in somewhat of a way. It can be. So yeah.
The context is different, and this is why you gotta use the verses that come before and the verses that come after in order to add the context to it. It's not the same level of submission as a husband to the wife. When it says submit yourselves to one another, it says because of your reverence to Christ, and then it goes deep down into it and it says husbands love your wives as Christ loves the church, and then it also goes into identifying how wives, you have to submit yourselves to your husbands as to the Lord. So the submission and the context that goes into it is much different, is not the same. Men don't submit to their wives, and it doesn't say that men should submit to their wives. When you look at the context after he says it, as the same way that a wife is supposed to submit to a husband, it's completely different. It's almost like you're supposed to have the covering over your wife because you love her so much that you're ensuring that you're covering her in the same way that God covers you. And then wives are supposed to submit themselves to the covering of the husband by allowing him to make the decisions as the head of the household. And so that she is supposed to learn from him, and then she is supposed to govern the children in the same way that the husband governs the wife. So it's a completely different concept. You can't just say submit to your wife, and he's like, you got to add the context because it's completely different, and you're not supposed to move like that. Don't be a sissy and start submitting to your wife the same way that she's supposed to submit to you. I'm talking to the guys.
Anton, do you think though that submission in the thing that you just said, everything you said, do you think that the man, and we may have talked about this before, but do you think that a husband, so you, for example, would take into consideration or should take into consideration your wife's, input? Let's say you're like, what, we're going to do this or that. And she's like, even though you might hold the ultimate, decision making, how much of her input influences what your final decision is in your house?
The same way that your CTO and your CFO's information and contribution input influences what the CEO does in the company. Like, you're supposed to take into consideration everybody's input in order to make a more informed decision. I'll take input from a little child if they're able to give me the type of information to help me make a more informed decision. But let's be clear, it's still my decision at the end of the day.
Right. Okay. So you do take that input.
And yeah, of course. I'd be a fool not to. It's some of the dopest people in the world. I've met some women that's just absolutely out of this world with their ability to be able to decipher through some subjects and add value, and for her to be able to navigate through certain things. It's some keys that only women can unlock. You are a fool. See, the problem with guys, conversely, is that guys don't understand that women can be your biggest asset.